Your ancestors were not brave. They were terrified, every single night. And that terror, that precise, disciplined, collective terror, is the only reason you are sitting here right now. It is 4 in the afternoon. The sun is already gone. It will not return for 16 hours. The temperature is dropping toward 25 degrees below zero. There is no moon. Clouds have swallowed the stars. You are in absolute darkness. Not dark like your room without a light. Dark like the inside of a closed fist. And something is breathing on the other side of the skins hanging at the entrance of your shelter. You cannot run. You do not know which direction is safe. You cannot scream. That draws more things. You cannot light a high flame. The smoke suffocates you within minutes. The light marks your position for kilometers. You cannot do nothing, because doing nothing in that cold means you do not wake up. So what do? Your ancestors faced this exact moment. Not once, not occasionally, every single night for over 70,000 years. And they did not survive by luck. They survived by system. A system so precise, so layered, so ruthlessly tested by death after death after death, that modern science is only now beginning to fully decode it. And here is what makes it truly remarkable. One piece of this system, if broken, just one, meant you did not see morning. You did not camp where you wanted. In the Paleolithic world, the choice of where to sleep was not comfort. It was survival calculus. Archaeological sites across Europe and Asia reveal something extraordinary. The same patterns, repeated across cultures separated by thousands of kilometers and tens of thousands of years. The same orientations, the same positions, the same logic. This was not coincidence. This was convergent engineering. Different groups of humans, with no contact between them, arriving at identical conclusions because the problem was identical and the human body never changed, back against rock or ravine, never exposed. A natural wall behind you eliminates the angle from which something can approach unseen. Entrance facing east, the first gray light of dawn arrives there first, and in a world without clocks, that light was the difference between controlled waking and being caught asleep. Never in valleys. Cold air is heavy. It sinks. It pools. A valley floor at night could be 8 to 10 degrees colder than the slope above. And in a world where your body is already fighting to stay warm, those degrees were not abstract. They were organs shutting down one by one, never on peaks. The wind does not negotiate. The shelter itself was a calculated microclimate. Skins over bone or wood frames, compacted snow packed against the sides. To a modern eye that looks like cold pressed against cold. In reality, it is physics working correctly. Snow traps air. Trapped air does not move, and air that does not move does not steal heat. But here is what most people would get wrong. A perfectly sealed shelter was a death sentence. Carbon monoxide, produced by any enclosed fire, is invisible, odorless, and silent. It does not wake you. It simply lowers oxygen in your blood until your body decides, quietly, to stop. Your ancestors had no word for it, but they understood the result. They left strategic openings near the top. Small, deliberate, sufficient. The ground was its own silent enemy. Direct contact with frozen earth pulls heat from the body faster than open air, a process modern wilderness training still lists as a leading cause of hypothermia. The solution was layering, dry branches, then moss, then skins. A thermal barrier between the living body and the underground cold. Thousands died learning this. The ones who survived taught their children. You are here because somewhere in that chain, no lesson was missed. But the shelter was only the first layer. The second is where most people made their final mistake. Fire was not safety. Fire was a negotiation. And if you negotiated badly, it killed you faster than the cold. Too large, and smoke fills the shelter within minutes. Too visible, and light travels kilometers through frozen air, broadcasting one clear signal to everything within range. Here is warmth. Here is food. Come. Too small, and the cold dismantles you organ by organ. The solution was not more fire. The solution was less. Embers. Low, incandescent, nearly smokeless heat from dense dry wood, chosen specifically for how slowly and cleanly it burned. No green branches. Green wood holds water. and water and fire produces thick smoke that announces your position with the efficiency of a signal tower. No fat thrown carelessly into coals. Fat produces sudden flares, and sudden flares produce the one thing you cannot afford in Paleolithic darkness: visibility. Picture this. Deep in the night, the camp is quiet. Someone shifts in sleep. A small piece of fat drips into the embers. For 3 seconds, the shelter lights up. Outside, something that was moving away stops. This is why fire discipline was not preference. It was law. Embers were distributed between shelters before darkness fell. Movements around the fire were minimal, calculated, intentional. Nobody added wood without checking first. And on the worst nights, when something large was circling, the fire went out completely. Those nights, survival came down to shared body heat, layered skins, absolute stillness, and the fragile hope that dawn was closer than it felt. But fire discipline meant nothing if the person next to you was already asleep when danger arrived. Nobody slept at the same time. That is the rule that held everything else together. Not weapons, not fire, not shelter. The single most important survival technology your ancestors possessed was a social protocol so deeply embedded it required no discussion, no command, no written law. 2 or 3 people were awake at all times, not to fight. Fighting was the last option, and usually the wrong one. They were awake to listen, to smell, to detect the difference between wind moving through rock and something breathing that should not be there. The sleeping arrangement was not casual. Children and elders at the center, the warmest position, the most protected angle. Young adults near the entrance, where reaction speed mattered more than experience. The most seasoned members at the corners, where their awareness covered the angles that darkness hid. This was not assigned. No elder gave orders. It was absorbed, the way children absorb language, without being taught grammar, simply by living inside it long enough that it becomes the only way they know how to be. That is what 70,000 years of pressure does to a social species. It does not write rules. It builds instincts. The communication was touch. 1 press on the shoulder, something outside. 2 presses, wake the next. Sustained pressure. Do not move. Do not breathe loudly. Now. No words. Because words have sound, and sound in Paleolithic darkness was information you could not afford to give away. Now picture it. 3rd watch. Embers almost dark. Wind moves between the rocks in long, low pulses. And then, underneath the wind, footsteps. Not human. Too heavy. Too slow. Too deliberate. Something is circling the shelter. Your hand moves without thought. 1 press on the shoulder beside you. He wakes without sound. He presses the next. In 30 seconds, every person in that shelter is awake, motionless, breathing in shallow, controlled pulls of air. A child begins to stir. His mother's hand moves in the dark. Not fast, not harsh, with the quiet precision of someone who has rehearsed this moment 1,000 times without ever practicing it once. She covers his mouth gently. She holds him against her chest. Outside, the footsteps slow. A long silence. Then something presses its face closer to the entrance skins. Nobody moves. 20 minutes, possibly more. The footsteps move away, and still nobody relaxes. Because relaxing before confirmation is how people died. 1 full hour passes before the watch confirms. Nothing returning. Only then do some of them sleep again. That mother's hand pressing gently over her child's mouth in absolute darkness. That is not cruelty. That is not fear. That is the most precise definition of love under pressure that has ever existed. And it was practiced, in some version, across 3 continents, by people who never met, who spoke no common language, who shared nothing except the same darkness and the same desperate need to see another morning. The group survived the predator that night. But the predator was not always an animal. The smell killed you before the predator did. That is not a metaphor. In frozen air, organic scent, blood, fat, bone marrow, cooked meat, travels with a clarity and distance that is difficult for a modern mind to fully appreciate. Cave lions, giant hyenas, short-faced bears, predators whose fossil records place them consistently at or near Paleolithic human sites, possessed olfactory systems estimated to be hundreds of times more sensitive than the human nose. A meal eaten inside your shelter at dusk was, to these animals, a precise advertisement broadcasting through the darkness for kilometers in every direction. Your ancestors understood this without science. They understood it because the ones who did not understand it did not leave descendants. The response was systematic. Bones buried under snow or burned until organic compounds were destroyed. Food waste carried away from camp, downwind, downhill, into running water where possible, before darkness fell. Nothing with biological smell remained near the nocturnal shelter. The perimeter was not a wall. It was a sensory void, deliberately constructed. Beyond smell, the perimeter was engineered for detection. Loose stones at approach angles, not to stop anything, but to move when touched. Dry branches placed across likely paths. In regions where archaeological evidence suggests early relationships between humans and proto-domesticated wolves, some groups may have had a biological warning system that no stone could match, animals whose senses extended awareness far beyond the range of any human. But here is what no animal could warn you about. The most dangerous predator that stalked Paleolithic camps walked upright. It had hands. It used fire. It understood exactly how you thought, because it had been shaped by the same darkness, the same hunger, the same desperate calculation of survival. Skeletal remains from multiple Paleolithic sites across Europe show evidence of perimortem trauma, wounds consistent with interpersonal violence rather than animal predation. In periods of extreme scarcity, other human groups represented something no shelter engineering could fully address. A thinking, adaptive threat that knew precisely what you had and precisely how to take it. This is why camps were never on obvious travel routes. This is why weapons slept within reach of the hand, every night, without exception. The threat from outside was managed, barely, constantly, exhaustingly. The final threat came from within, from the darkness inside the mind, the moment someone decided to step outside alone. Leaving the shelter at night was necessary. You needed to urinate. You needed to check a sound. You needed emergency firewood when embers were dying. These were not optional. They were requirements of biological reality. And the darkness waiting outside was not the darkness of an unlit room. It was absolute, the kind that removes all spatial reference so completely that your brain, deprived of visual input, begins to generate its own. You could put your hand against your face and see nothing. Not shadow, not outline, nothing. In that darkness, disorientation is not gradual. It is instantaneous. Research on spatial disorientation in zero visibility conditions shows that humans lose accurate directional sense within seconds, not minutes. The internal compass that feels reliable in daylight becomes, in absolute darkness, a confident liar. You feel certain you are walking toward the shelter. You are walking away from it. The protocol was absolute. No one left alone. Ever. Always in pairs. One moves, one holds. A rope or twisted skin connecting them. Maximum distance, 10 meters. Beyond that, the tether became the only truth in a world where every other sense was lying. When greater distance was unavoidable, tactile markers guided the way. Stones readable by foot in darkness. Branches pushed into the ground at meaningful angles. Ropes stretched between fixed points, so that a hand reaching in darkness could find direction when the mind could not. And if someone became separated, there was a protocol for that too. Every 30 seconds, someone struck bone against stone. Talk, talk, talk. Not a voice. Voices scatter in wind, lose direction, fade. A struck bone carries further and holds direction better than any human shout. Now understand what this scene actually was. You went out. Your companion held your arm. 7 steps. You finished. You began to return. And your foot found hidden ice. You fell. You separated. Your companion called your name and the wind took it sideways. You are 4 meters from the shelter, and you might as well be 4 kilometers. You start walking toward where you believe safety is. You are walking away from it. The cold finds the gap between your skins. Your lungs tighten. The darkness has weight. And then, underneath the wind, talk, talk, talk. You turn. You walk toward the sound. 5 minutes later, hands grab you and pull you inside. You are shaking, not entirely from cold, from the sudden crushing recognition that you just met the version of yourself that does not survive, that the only difference between you and the bones, archaeologists find meters from ancient campsites, was a protocol, a sound, a piece of knowledge someone before you paid for with their life, so that you would not have to. Every rule in this system was written not in language, but in the deaths of the people who got it wrong first. Now step back and see it whole. 5 layers, not 5 tips, not 5 tricks. 5 interlocking systems where the failure of any single one cascaded into the failure of all the others. Shelter without fire discipline was a tomb. Fire without social protocol was a signal. Social protocol without predator management was a circle of awake people waiting to die quietly. Predator management without the anti-loss protocol meant that the moment someone stepped outside, the entire architecture of survival had a hole large enough to swallow a person whole. It only worked when it worked together. And here is what the archaeological record shows that should stop you completely. The same patterns: Europe, Central Asia, the Americas. Cultures separated by oceans, by ice sheets, by tens of thousands of years of independent development, all arriving at the same shelters, the same fire logic, the same social structures, the same tethered movement in darkness. Not because they communicated, because darkness presents the same problem to every human body that has ever existed. And the human body, when pressed hard enough, long enough, with death as the only alternative, finds the same answers. 70,000 years of nights. 70,000 years of this system working, or the people who used it vanishing without descendants. Your ancestors did not just endure the darkness, they engineered it. They mapped it, structured it, distributed it across every member of the group, until the night itself became something that could be managed. Not defeated, never defeated, but managed. That intelligence did not disappear when electric light arrived. It is sitting inside you right now, in the way you instinctively position yourself with your back to the wall in an unfamiliar room, in the way a sudden sound at night snaps you awake before your conscious mind has processed anything, in the way you reach for the person next to you in the dark before you reach for anything else. You are not separate from these people. You are the proof that they succeeded, and perhaps this is the deepest truth the Paleolithic night has left us, that darkness is not a problem unique to the Ice Age. Every generation faces a version of it. A moment when there is no light, no map, no certainty, and something unknown is breathing just outside the boundary of what they understand. The protocol does not change. Pay attention. Signal each other. Do not go alone. They were terrified every single night, and they won anyway. If you stayed until this moment, you already know which protocol matters most to you. Tell me in the comments. And if you want to know what happened on the nights when every piece of firewood was soaked, the temperature still falling, and lighting fire was not optional, that is exactly where we go next.